Friends, if you want to watch the super fun and heartwarming animated movie Horton Hears a Who in English, then make sure to like this video right now. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on exciting updates about your favorite movies. In today's video, we're going to talk about the hilarious, colorful, and beautifully made 2008 animated film Horton Hears a Who, a movie that's not just for kids but for audiences of all ages who enjoy a good laugh, a strong message, and stunning animation. We're going to explore everything about this movie. What is Horton Hears a Who all about? What makes it so special and loved by millions around the world even today? Where can you watch it? And on which OTT platforms or satellite channels is it currently available? I will be giving you all the details, so make sure you stay with us till the end. We'll also dive deep into the production side of things. From the early stages of pre-production and script development, to the voice casting, animation techniques, and editing process in post-production, this movie went through a lot of effort and creativity to bring Dr. Seuss's classic book to life. We'll look at the team behind the film, the music department, and how the soundtrack added emotion and charm to every scene. We'll even talk about the movie's budget and how it performed at the box office when it released in 2008. Of course, we'll also cover the story of the film, how an elephant named Horton hears a tiny voice on a speck of dust and goes on a mission to protect the tiny city of Whoville, despite everyone around him thinking he's crazy. I'll be giving you a short review of the story and telling you why this movie still stands out even today. We'll also take a closer look at the characters, the voice cast including some big names, and how well they brought the characters to life. We'll discuss who played which character and how their performance added to the magic of the film. And lastly, we'll go over some fascinating and fun facts about this movie that you might not know. From behind-the-scenes trivia to details that connect back to the original book and other Dr. Seuss stories, there's a lot of cool stuff we're going to share. So friends, make sure you watch this video till the end, because if you're a fan of animation, comedy, adventure, or simply a good story with a meaningful message, this one is for you. Let's get started and dive into the tiny world of Whoville with the big-hearted Horton. All right, let's jump trunk first into the wild, whimsical world of Horton Hears a Who, a story that might look like a fun, animated adventure on the surface, but trust me, it's got layers. Big, fluffy, imaginative, and emotional layers. Our story kicks off in the jungle of Knoll, where we meet Horton, a kind-hearted elephant with ears that are basically satellite dishes. One ordinary day, he hears a tiny voice coming from a speck of dust. Yep, a speck. That's already weird, but Horton, he's not one to ignore someone in need, even if they're the size of a breadcrumb. So Horton carefully places the speck on a clover and starts talking to it. Turns out, there's a whole microscopic city living on that speck called Whoville, filled with tiny creatures called Whos. And their mayor, a frantic, lovable guy with 96 daughters, one son, and one giant problem: Whoville is in danger, and no one else believes it exists. So now we've got two worlds that couldn't be more different, one enormous and leafy, the other teeny and bustling, but both connected by one unlikely hero who believes a person's a person, no matter how small. The structure of the story is surprisingly tight, almost like a fairy tale crossed with an action comedy. It doesn't jump back and forth in time or experiment too wildly with perspective, but what it does do is playfully juggle the big and small worlds in a way that keeps the audience totally engaged. We flip between Horton's jungle journey and the mayor's chaotic life in Whoville, creating this awesome dual narrative rhythm. Horton is dealing with jungle politics and social pressure because no one else can hear the Whos and everyone thinks he's lost his marbles, while the mayor is facing disbelief from his own council and trying to convince the Whos that their whole existence is at risk. Talk about a communication problem. The first big turning point comes when Horton commits to protecting the speck. This might sound simple, but in the jungle of Knoll, this is social suicide. The jungle's self-declared boss, Kangaroo, strict, proud, and allergic to imagination, thinks Horton's belief in invisible people is dangerous nonsense. She takes it upon herself to maintain order and stop Horton from spreading his ideas. Now we've got our conflict: belief versus disbelief, imagination versus control, kindness versus conformity. As the story barrels forward, Horton's journey becomes more dangerous. He's hunted, ridiculed, and even betrayed by those he considered friends. There's a particularly wild and emotional scene where a team of jungle animals captures Horton and puts him on trial, trying to destroy the speck. This part hits hard because you see someone who's only trying to help being completely misunderstood and punished. Meanwhile, over in Whoville, earthquakes and weather disasters are rocking the city as a result of Horton's peril in the jungle. The worlds are colliding, literally and emotionally. The climax is high stakes and surprisingly intense. Horton is chained up, the speck is about to be destroyed, and things look utterly hopeless. But just when you think it's over, the Whos unite. The mayor rallies the entire city to make as much noise as possible so the jungle creatures can finally hear them. It's a race against time. The tension builds as their voices grow louder until at the very last moment, a single tiny yawp from the smallest who finally breaks through. The jungle hears them. The Whos exist. Horton was right all along. Cue the emotional payoff. This is where the heart of the film really lands. It's not just about saving a tiny world. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when no one else does. It's about how even the smallest voice matters. It's about empathy, courage, and sticking your trunk out for someone who needs you. And while all of that is going on, the film never forgets to be funny, clever, and full of wild, Seussian wonder. It doesn't need time jumps or tricky narration to be unique. It just leans into its world with full creative energy. So from jungle trails to microscopic cities, from chases to council meetings, from clovers to kangaroos, Horton Hears a Who takes you on a wild ride that never lets go of its message or its fun. Let's talk about characters, because in Horton Hears a Who, it's not just about an elephant with big ears and a big heart. It's about a whole collection of personalities that collide, clash, grow, and surprise you. And trust me, the character development in this film is as colorful as the animation itself. Let's start with Horton. On the surface, he's this happy-go-lucky elephant who spends his time splashing in pools, teaching jungle kids, and being generally delightful. But as soon as he hears that tiny voice from the speck, something in him shifts. He becomes fiercely loyal, determined, and absolutely unshakable in his mission. What makes Horton stand out isn't that he's strong or brave in the traditional sense. He's not charging into battles or showing off muscles. His real strength is compassion. He listens when no one else will. He believes when everyone else doubts. And he keeps going even when the whole jungle turns against him. That's some serious growth, not in personality, because he's always been kind, but in courage. He learns to stand up for what's right, even when it's not popular or easy. Now over to the mayor of Whoville, one of the most underrated characters in animated films, period. This guy is juggling a city crisis, a council that doesn't take him seriously, and a household full of chaos, including his incredibly quiet, deeply thoughtful son Jojo. The mayor starts off as a bit bumbling and unsure. He knows something is wrong in Whoville, but he can't get anyone to believe him. Over the course of the film, though, we see him become bolder, louder, literally, and more confident. His journey is about leadership and learning to trust his instincts. He stops trying to be what everyone expects and starts doing what needs to be done, even if it means upsetting the traditionalists of Whoville. And let's not ignore his relationship with Jojo, which is soft, complicated, and beautiful. At first, he doesn't understand why Jojo won't speak. But instead of forcing him, the mayor eventually learns to listen. That quiet support becomes key in the final act, when Jojo delivers the yawp that saves everyone. The mayor's arc is about realizing that leading with love and open-mindedness is far more powerful than just following protocol. Now let's talk about Kangaroo. She's not just an antagonist. She's a full-on representation of fear-driven control. She doesn't evolve in the same way Horton or the mayor do, but she serves an essential purpose. Her obsession with order, rules, and structure makes her the perfect foil to Horton's imagination and empathy. Her arc doesn't involve transformation as much as revelation. She begins the film convinced she knows what's best for everyone, but by the end, when she hears the Whos for herself, there's this tiny flicker of realization. She's forced to face the idea that maybe she was wrong, and while the film doesn't turn her into a hug-it-out hero, it does show that even the most stubborn characters can change their tune when they're finally willing to listen. Then there's Jojo, the smallest Who with the biggest silence. He doesn't speak for nearly the entire film, but he's always watching, always thinking. Everyone assumes he has nothing to say, but he's actually carrying the weight of his city on his tiny shoulders. When he finally does speak, it's not just a line of dialogue, it's the most important moment in the story. Jojo's arc is about finding his voice, literally and emotionally, and understanding that his silence didn't mean absence, it meant potential. Even the background characters have their moments. Morton the Mouse might be tiny and nervous, but he shows loyalty in the face of fear. The Wickersham brothers, those mischievous monkeys, represent mob mentality and how quickly people can jump on the "let's mock Horton" bandwagon. But all of them contribute to this world of loud opinions, silent truths, and hidden strengths. The relationships between the characters are what keep the story emotionally grounded. Horton and the mayor never meet in person, but they develop this deep bond built on trust across worlds. Horton's relationship with the children of the jungle, especially the little animals who look up to him, adds another layer. He's not just defending Whoville, he's modeling what it means to do the right thing, even when it's hard. And the mayor's growing understanding of his son mirrors Horton's belief in voices others can't hear. These parallel arcs reinforce the movie's core idea: every voice matters, no matter how small. So yes, the characters in Horton Hears a Who are more than just funny animated figures. They're reflections of courage, fear, stubbornness, hope, and change. They grow, they struggle, they evolve, and they do it all while making us laugh, think, and cheer. Each character plays a role in shaping a story that feels bigger than a speck, and that's saying something. Let's get into the performances, the voices behind the chaos, the charm, and the pure heart of Horton Hears a Who, because when you've got an animated film this lively, it's the voice actors who have to do the heavy lifting. And wow, do they bring their A-game. First, we have Jim Carrey as Horton the Elephant, and honestly, this casting is nothing short of genius. Jim Carrey doesn't just voice Horton, he becomes him. Every line is delivered with that perfect mix of sincerity and silliness. You get the sense that Horton's brain is always one imaginative leap ahead of everyone else's, and Carrey taps into that energy flawlessly. He makes Horton feel lovable and goofy, but also wise and deeply empathetic. Whether he's whispering to the speck or dodging angry mobs, Carrey's performance is packed with heart and humor. It's not just funny, it's full of nuance, which isn't something you always expect from an animated elephant. Then you've got Steve Carell as the mayor of Whoville, and he absolutely nails it. Carell brings this anxious, high-strung energy to the role that feels so genuine, it's like the mayor has been living rent-free in your imagination forever. He captures that overwhelmed dad who's also a mayor vibe perfectly, balancing frantic comedic timing with moments of real emotional honesty. One minute he's panicking about an end-of-the-world prophecy, the next he's trying to connect with his quiet son Jojo, and somehow Carell makes it all feel natural. His voice is filled with that jittery sincerity that makes you root for the mayor, even when he's bumbling through chaos. Now let's talk about Carol Burnett as Kangaroo. This is a performance that commands the scene every time she speaks. Burnett brings this icy, controlling tone to the role that's equal parts hilarious and intimidating. You can feel her disdain in every syllable, and yet there's a weird charm in her over-the-top obsession with order. She's not a typical villain. She's more of a self-righteous rule enforcer who believes she's saving the jungle from dangerous ideas. Burnett gives her just the right amount of snobbery and theatrical flair to make you love hating her. And the way she delivers lines like she's scolding the entire audience, classic. The supporting cast is stacked with talent, and every one of them adds flavor to the film. Will Arnett as Vlad the Vulture is a scene stealer with that gravelly, menacing yet ridiculous voice. He plays the role like a mix between a villain and a misunderstood poet. His scenes feel like little comedy sketches within the movie, and Arnett's delivery makes sure you don't forget him anytime soon. Seth Rogen plays Morton the Mouse, Horton's nervous sidekick, and his voice is instantly recognizable. Rogen brings that classic awkward charm to the role, delivering lines with the perfect mix of worry and loyalty. Morton may not have a big arc, but Rogen's voice gives him heart and makes you want to follow him into the jungle. And then there's Jonah Hill, Isla Fisher, Amy Poehler, and a whole host of familiar voices popping up as Whoville residents and jungle creatures. They're like the seasoning in a great dish, not always center stage, but absolutely essential to the flavor of the film. Their deliveries are sharp, comedic, and filled with energy. Even the smaller characters feel memorable because of how distinct and committed these voice actors are. What's really impressive is how the cast as a whole manages to maintain the emotional core of the story while still having fun with it. Horton's belief in the Who's, the mayor's relationship with Jojo, even Kangaroo's refusal to accept things she can't see. All these emotional threads hit harder because of the actors behind them. The performances add depth, heart, and personality to the animation, making these characters feel alive, even when they're jumping between tree branches or arguing with invisible cities. It's not just about sounding funny, it's about timing, tone, and connecting with the audience using nothing but voice. And in Horton Hears a Who, the cast doesn't just speak, they perform, filling every scene with warmth, wit, and wild energy that pulls you straight into the story. Let's talk about the brains behind the chaos, the heart behind the humor, the directors of Horton Hears a Who, Jimmy Hayward and Steve Martino. These two didn't just take a beloved Dr. Seuss book and slap some animation on it. No, they brought it to life with style, rhythm, and a boatload of creativity. From the very first scene, you can feel their hands guiding the entire tone of the film, whimsical, fast-paced, full of wonder, but always grounded in something emotionally real. That's a tricky tightrope to walk, but they manage it with flair. The overall tone of the movie is this perfect balancing act between absurd comedy and sincere storytelling. You got jokes flying every few seconds, some for kids, some sneakily for the adults, and yet the emotional stakes never get lost. That's because the directors keep the mood constantly shifting in just the right way. When Horton's being silly, the world becomes elastic, exaggerated, and cartoonish. But the moment things get serious, like when the speck is threatened or when the mayor struggles to be heard, you can feel the shift. The lighting tightens, the camera pulls in, the whole vibe leans more dramatic without ever losing its Seussian magic. Stylistically, the directors absolutely go wild in the best way. They take the bold, curvy, quirky shapes of Dr. Seuss's original illustrations and stretch them into full 3D animation that feels like a painting in motion. The design of the jungle of Knoll is packed with oversized leaves, oddball creatures, and wacky landscapes, all bursting with color and imagination. Whoville, on the other hand, is this tiny, mechanical, whimsical city where everything feels like it's powered by springs and gears. And the best part, the transitions between the two worlds are seamless. You never feel like you're switching tones or styles because the directors unify the worlds through consistent movement, color, and rhythm. And let's talk about pacing, because this movie moves. From the moment Horton hears that voice from the speck, the story takes off and rarely slows down. But it's not chaotic. The directors know exactly when to pause and let the emotion settle in. They give space for Horton's quiet moments of reflection. They slow things down when the mayor tries to connect with Jojo. And then, just when you think you've caught your breath, they kick the energy back up with a chase scene or a wild visual gag. It keeps the audience engaged without ever feeling exhausting. Shot composition isn't usually the first thing you think of in animation, but here it's used brilliantly. The directors make the scale differences between Horton's world and Whoville feel massive. You'll often see Horton talking to the speck with this vast jungle background behind him, emphasizing how small Whoville really is. Meanwhile, in the Who's world, everything is tightly framed and bustling, making their tiny universe feel big and busy. This contrast enhances the story's theme of small things having great importance, all without anyone ever saying it out loud. And then there are the big, bold creative choices, like the anime-inspired daydream sequences where Horton imagines himself as a superhero or kung fu master. These little cutaways are completely ridiculous, but they work because they're grounded in Horton's character. They let us see the world through his wildly imaginative brain, and the directors never miss a beat in making it fun and visually fresh. Those moments are the kind of flourishes that keep the movie feeling playful and surprising. But beyond all the style and speed, what really makes the direction shine is the emotional clarity. The directors never lose sight of the story's core, believing in others, standing up for the unseen, and embracing your imagination. Every camera angle, every musical cue, every transition between worlds is laser-focused on reinforcing those ideas. And that's what elevates this from just a fun, animated movie to something more memorable. It's not just directed well, it's directed with vision, intention, and a whole lot of heart. Let's dive into the wild, wacky, and wonderfully controlled chaos that is the cinematography of Horton Hears a Who. Yes, even animated movies have cinematography, and in this one, it's practically a character of its own. This film isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about using every frame, every angle, every shadow and beam of light to crank up the emotion, the tension, the comedy, and the magic of the story. And it does it all while bouncing between two completely different worlds, the giant jungle of Null and the microscopic, bustling city of Whoville. Let's talk angles first, because this movie knows how to play with scale. You've got Horton, this gigantic, gentle elephant, and he's talking to a speck on a clover. How do you even begin to shoot that in a way that feels meaningful? The answer: clever framing. When Horton speaks to the speck, the camera often pulls in tight, isolating him with the clover in hand, making the moment feel intimate, like he's holding something sacred. Other times, the camera swings way out, showing him alone in a vast, open jungle, just one creature talking to something no one else can see. It builds this beautiful sense of isolation but also quiet determination. The cinematography gives us Horton's perspective and lets us feel what he's feeling. Then there's Whoville, which is a cinematographic playground. Everything's tiny and tightly packed, so the camera work there is fast, snappy, and energetic. You get whip pans, crash zooms, and these clever little tracking shots through gears, tubes, and bouncing vehicles. It's not just visually fun, it creates a sense of constant motion and manic cheer that reflects the Who lifestyle perfectly. And when things go south and the whole city starts rumbling, the cinematography shifts again, pulling back, letting the tension creep in through wide shots and dramatic shadows. Suddenly Whoville doesn't feel quite so cozy anymore. That's how you build atmosphere, even in a sugar-coated cartoon town. Lighting plays a huge role, too. It's not just day and night here, it's mood lighting all the way. When Horton is happy, the jungle glows with soft sunlight, almost like a fairy tale. But when Kangaroo and her minions turn against him, shadows stretch across the landscape. The bright, bouncy jungle starts to feel oppressive and hostile. In Whoville, lighting shifts from warm and festive to cool and uncertain as the citizens start to doubt their mayor. It's all incredibly intentional, and it helps guide your emotional response without you even realizing it. One moment you're laughing, and the next you're clenching your fists, and it's all because the visuals are quietly leading you there. Let's not forget the set-piece scenes, the ones where the cinematography just decides to go wild. The Cloverfield chase, it's like a full-blown action movie montage. The camera swoops, spins, and tumbles as Horton chases the clover through an endless sea of flowers. The pacing and visual rhythm of that scene feel like something out of a blockbuster. Or how about the moment Jojo climbs to the top of the music tower in silence, determined to do something brave? The camera holds on him with a slow, upward movement, framing him like a lone hero rising to a challenge. The lighting dims, the noise fades, and for a second, the chaos of Whoville disappears. It's just Jojo and his choice. That's visual storytelling in its purest form. Even in the comedy beats, the cinematography knows exactly when to go full cartoon and when to pull back for the punchline. Horton's imaginary superhero sequences, for example, go full anime style with dramatic lighting, tilted angles, and absurd camera movements. It's over the top in the best way, and it contrasts beautifully with the grounded sincerity of his real-world scenes. It's like the visuals are letting you peek inside his brain, which is clearly a circus of imagination. Every scene, every frame, every carefully chosen angle in Horton Hears a Who is there to enhance the emotion, the stakes, or the ridiculousness of what's happening. Whether it's capturing the scale of an elephant or the heartbeat of a speck-sized city, the cinematography is working overtime to make you feel like you're right there in it, sprinting through a field of clovers, flying through the gears of Whoville, or holding your breath as a tiny voice yells out into the void. And somehow, it all fits together into one seamless, stunning, joyfully cinematic experience. Let's get into the rhythm of Horton Hears a Who. And yes, this movie has rhythm. Not in a musical way, but in how it moves, how it flows, and how it keeps you locked in from one scene to the next without ever letting your attention slip. The editing in this film is like a perfectly choreographed dance between mayhem and heart, constantly shifting gears but never losing the beat. The pacing is fast, zippy, and full of energy, but it knows when to slam the brakes and let the emotional weight of a moment land. That's not easy to do, especially in a film that's flipping back and forth between a jungle full of zany animals and a microscopic world inside a speck of dust. But the editing here makes it feel effortless. From the very beginning, the movie throws you into Horton's world with quick cuts, bouncy transitions, and sharp timing. The scenes in the jungle of Noel move with this rubbery, elastic energy that matches Horton's personality. When he's running, imagining, or arguing with Kangaroo, the editing keeps things punchy, cutting just at the right second to land a joke or emphasize a reaction. It's like comedic timing baked directly into the cut. Then, just as you're getting used to the pace of jungle life, the film zips over to Whoville, and boom, you're in a totally different rhythm. The editing switches gears, but it still keeps the same kinetic flow. In Whoville, everything's more compressed and chaotic, so the cuts are tighter, faster, more jittery. It mirrors the anxiety of the mayor and the buzz of life in a city that has no idea it's riding on a speck. One of the best things about the editing is how it handles the jumps between these two worlds. Horton and the mayor are having parallel journeys, but they never meet, except through voice. So how do you keep that connection alive? Seamless transitions. You'll often see the camera zoom in on Horton's Clover, then cut to a matching motion shot in Whoville. Or the mayor's voice will echo out and lead directly into Horton's next scene. These aren't just clever, they're essential to making the two storylines feel like parts of the same movie. And it never feels jarring. You never think, wait, where are we now? Because the edits guide you through the story like a jungle tour guide who's had way too much coffee. Let's talk about the big moments, those action-packed, emotionally charged sequences where pacing can make or break the scene. Remember the Cloverfield chase? That thing is edited like a full-blown action thriller. The camera cuts fast, the angles switch constantly, and the sound design cranks up with every leap and tumble. But it never becomes overwhelming. The editing makes sure you always know where Horton is, what's at stake, and where the Clover's bouncing next. And then there's the emotional climax, when the Whos are trying to make themselves heard. The pacing slows, the cuts linger just a bit longer, and the whole movie takes a deep breath. It builds tension, it builds suspense, and then, boom, Jojo yells, the sound pierces through, and the scene cuts perfectly to Kangaroo's stunned reaction. That's editing doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes, making the emotion hit harder because of how the rhythm builds to that exact moment. Even the quieter scenes get a boost from sharp editing. Take Jojo's silent climb to the top of the music tower. There's no dialogue, just visual storytelling. And the pacing lets that scene breathe. Long, deliberate cuts. Slow pans. No rush. Just anticipation. And you feel it. You feel every second of hesitation, every inch he climbs, and it's because the editing is letting you sit in that moment with him. It's rare in animated family films to get that kind of deliberate pacing, and it makes the payoff that much more powerful. There's also a sense of playfulness baked into the edit style. The directors clearly had fun with scene transitions. You'll get spinning wipes, zoom-ins, stylized flash cuts, little visual treats that keep the energy high and the mood light. But it's never just for style's sake. Every cut is in service of a story, whether it's a snappy reaction shot, a comedic beat, or a transition to a new location. The film is constantly in motion, but you never feel lost because the editing is like a GPS made out of sugar and speed. So much of what makes Horton Hears a Who work, its energy, its comedy, its emotion, comes down to how it's edited. The pacing keeps things exciting without ever feeling rushed. The transitions between worlds are smooth and smart. And the rhythm of the film builds momentum like a roller coaster that knows exactly when to drop, when to loop, and when to slow down just enough to make you feel something real. It's a masterclass in animated storytelling, disguised as a chaotic jungle ride. Now let's tune into one of the most unsung heroes of Horton Hears a Who, the soundtrack and score. Yes, the visuals are bright, the jokes are rapid fire, and the characters are bouncing around like they're all on sugar rushes, but without the music, it wouldn't hit half as hard. The score here does more than just fill the silence. It dances with the story, weaves in and out of the action, and sometimes steals the spotlight entirely. It's like a secret narrator hiding in the background, guiding your emotions while Horton marches, the Who's panic, and the jungle spins into glorious mayhem. Right from the start, the score lets you know exactly what kind of ride you're in for. It's whimsical but tight, light-hearted but clever, with melodies that practically skip along with the story. There's this wonderful bounciness to the instrumentation, lots of pizzicato strings, playful woodwinds, and percussion that taps and bops in all the right places. It's music that doesn't just accompany a scene, it plays with it. When Horton's walking through the jungle imagining himself as an action hero, the score leans into dramatic swells and heroic brass, parodying the epic soundtracks of superhero blockbusters. And when he's sneaking around or dodging trouble, the music shifts into mischievous plucks and quirky rhythms that make even a simple step feel like a spy mission. But it's not all fun and games. The score knows when to step back and take a more emotional turn. One of the best examples is when the mayor starts to realize how serious things are in Whoville. The music slows down, soft piano notes sneak in, and the playfulness fades into something more reflective. You can almost hear the weight settling on his shoulders through the score. It becomes less about jokes and more about connection. The composers clearly knew how to pull the right emotional strings without hammering you over the head with sentimentality. One of the coolest tricks the score pulls is how it bridges the two worlds, the enormous jungle and the microscopic city. Horton's world has this open, adventurous musical vibe, with grand, sweeping melodies that match the vast, leafy environment. Whoville, on the other hand, gets more mechanical, more energetic, with music that sounds like it's been engineered by a room full of tiny inventors. But when the two storylines begin to converge, the music starts to blend. You'll hear the themes echo each other, harmonize in clever ways, and it subtly reinforces the idea that Horton and the Whos are connected, even if no one else believes it. And then we've got those big moments, the emotional peaks and the chaotic climaxes, where the score gets to shine in full force. Think of the scene where the Whos are trying desperately to make their voices heard. The music builds, layer by layer, starting small with a simple melody, then swelling with urgency as more Whos join in. The percussion rises, the strings start racing, and you can actually feel the tension in your chest building right alongside the music. And then, just when it all crescendos, you get a beat of silence. Just a second. The kind of silence that makes your ears stretch, wondering what's coming next. That's not just music, that's drama. And that silence, placed so carefully, makes JoJo's final yop feel like it echoes across the universe. The score is also peppered with musical jokes and surprises. Sometimes the soundtrack will undercut a dramatic moment with a whimsical little twinkle. Sometimes it'll build suspense with over-the-top orchestration just to land a pratfall or a punchline. But it's never obnoxious. It's smart. It's timing. It's a soundtrack that's in on the joke. It lets the comedy breathe, but it also knows when to disappear completely, letting the visuals and performances take center stage when they need to. And let's not forget the ending, a musical moment that goes full joy explosion. When the characters unite, when hope is restored, when all the chaos settles and the message hits home, the score bursts into a triumphant, feel-good finale. It's one of those musical cues that sticks in your head without you realizing it. You leave the film humming something, and you don't even know what, but it's there, and it's warm, and it makes you smile. So no, this soundtrack doesn't just sit in the background and behave. It leaps, sneaks, crashes, swells, giggles, and soars. It's the lifeblood of the movie's mood swings, emotional spikes, and comic rhythm. It doesn't just score the film, it performs alongside it, note by note, heartbeat by heartbeat. Let's talk about the big ideas hiding inside the colorful chaos of Horton Hears a Who, because oh yes, this isn't just a silly movie about an elephant talking to a flower. Beneath the slapstick comedy, bouncing clovers, and miniature towns full of panicked Whos lies a story packed with themes that hit harder than you'd expect. It's thoughtful, it's bold, and it sneaks its messages into your brain while you're laughing at a vulture with a vendetta or a kangaroo who thinks she's queen of the jungle. First and foremost, there's the iconic line that becomes the movie's heartbeat. A person's a person, no matter how small. Simple, right? But also powerful. That one line threads its way through every decision Horton makes, and it becomes the lens through which the entire story unfolds. It's a message about equality, about valuing every voice, no matter how tiny or overlooked. Horton doesn't care that nobody else can hear the Whos, he believes in them. And that belief becomes this quiet act of rebellion against a world that tells him he's crazy. Now let's dive into that rebellion, because another big theme here is standing up for what's right, even when you're alone. Horton's the only one in the jungle willing to risk everything for something he can't prove. He's mocked, hunted, and nearly caged, but he keeps going because he knows it's the right thing to do. And it's not just Horton. The mayor of Whoville is on the same journey, trying to convince his people that danger is real, that they're not safe, that they need to speak up. He's laughed at, ignored, pushed aside. Sound familiar? The movie hits on the idea of moral courage in a way that's surprisingly deep for a story where half the jokes involve monkeys launching bananas. It's about listening to your conscience, even if everyone else is tuned to a different station. But wait, we're not done. This movie also takes a big swing at conformity versus individuality. The kangaroo represents that rigid mindset. Rules are rules, the world is what you see, and there's no room for imagination or change. Horton, on the other hand, represents curiosity, empathy, and wonder. He imagines entire worlds inside a speck. He refuses to stick to the script. And guess what? He's right. The story becomes this playful battle between closed minds and open hearts. Whoville citizens also face that challenge internally. Most of them are living their lives like everything's fine, until the mayor starts shaking the foundation. His journey pushes them to see beyond comfort and speak up for their future. It's a story about collective action, how one voice can start a movement, but it takes a chorus to shake the world. And speaking of voices, the film plays with the theme of being heard. Jojo, the mayor's son, barely speaks through most of the film. He's quiet, misunderstood, full of ideas but afraid to share them, until the moment comes when his voice is the one that finally tips the scale. One tiny yop is all it takes to change everything. That's not just a fun plot twist, it's a message. Your voice matters, even if you think no one is listening, even if you think you're too small or too different. That one word from Jojo saves the entire city, and that idea sticks with you. There's also a more subtle but equally rich theme about perspective. Horton is gigantic, but the Whos are invisible to everyone else. The movie constantly flips the script on what matters and who matters. It nudges you to think about how vast the universe might be, how little we actually know, and how much could be going on in places we never even notice. It's cosmic philosophy disguised as a family film. It takes this idea from the original Dr. Seuss book and stretches it into something universal. What if we're all Whos on a speck, just hoping someone out there is listening? That thought is both humbling and hopeful. And somehow, it lands in a movie where a fish eats a clover. What's amazing is how the film manages to juggle all of this without ever becoming preachy. It delivers big ideas with humor and heart, never hammering them in, but letting them bloom naturally through the characters and their choices. You don't leave feeling like you got a lecture. You leave feeling like you saw something meaningful wrapped in glitter and laughter. It's a masterclass in how to slip powerful messages into something that feels light and breezy. And that's the real magic of Horton Hears a Who. It entertains, it uplifts, and it dares to say something big through something small. Just like the Whos, when it comes to the visual effects and CGI in Horton Hears a Who, the first thing to understand is that this movie is all about creating two very different worlds that somehow have to feel like parts of the same story. The jungle of Knoll is sprawling, wild, and colorful, while Whoville is tiny, intricate, and bursting with personality. The visual effects team had the tricky job of making these worlds believable and immersive without letting the magic break. And honestly, they nailed it with a mix of vibrant animation and clever effects that pull you right in. Starting with the jungle, the visual effects lean heavily into a stylized but lush aesthetic. Leaves rustle, water splashes, and dust kicks up with a tactile realism that makes the environment feel alive. The lighting plays a big role here. Dappled sunlight filters through thick foliage, creating shadows that move and shift realistically as Horton tromps through his surroundings. The textures aren't just flat colors. There's a depth to the surfaces, from the rough bark on the trees to the fuzzy feel of Horton's elephant skin. The CGI is polished but never overdone. Everything feels handcrafted with a touch of whimsy that matches the story's tone. Switching over to Whoville, the effects work double time to make this microscopic city feel like a bustling, fully realized place. Every building, every street lamp, and every tiny who is packed with detail. Here, CGI is used to enhance the miniature scale while also giving the city a quirky, almost mechanical charm. The movements of the Whos themselves are crisp and expressive, and you can see the careful animation work that gives them unique personalities despite their small size. The effects make the speck feel like its own universe, complete with weather, light shifts, and even little dust motes floating through the air, adding to the sense of scale and immersion. One of the coolest things about the visual effects is how seamlessly they blend the two worlds when the story demands it. The clover itself, an ordinary object in our eyes, is transformed into a visual marvel. The CGI here highlights its fragility and importance, with close-up shots that show every vein and curve. When Horton carries it, the camera angles and lighting make it feel like a precious, almost magical artifact. Effects like soft glows and subtle particle trails help sell the idea that this tiny world is fragile but vibrant. While Horton Hears a Who doesn't rely on flashy explosions or over-the-top digital wizardry, the visual effects are essential in creating atmosphere and supporting the story's emotional beats. For example, during moments of tension, like when the kangaroo is closing in or when the clover is at risk, the effects subtly ramp up the drama with shifting shadows, heightened contrasts, and dynamic camera movements that make you feel the urgency. It's like the visuals are whispering, "This matters. Pay attention." Practical effects, in the traditional sense, don't play a big role here because this is a fully animated world, but what the film does brilliantly is simulate practical textures and physics digitally. When Horton splashes through water, when dust puffs out from his footsteps, or when the wind sways the grass, the CGI mimics real-world reactions, so well that you momentarily forget you're watching animation. That's the sweet spot, when digital effects don't draw attention to themselves but instead enhance the believability of the world. Even the characters benefit from these effects. Horton's size is emphasized not just by his design, but by how the environment reacts around him, the way his feet press into soft earth, or how his huge ears catch the light. The kangaroo's sleek fur, the vulture's ragged feathers, and the whimsical designs of the Whos all get a boost from subtle digital touches that add realism without losing the cartoony charm. Overall, the visual effects in CGI in Horton Hears a Who feel like they're part of the story's heartbeat, quietly working behind the scenes, building worlds, supporting emotions, and making the impossible seem believable. They never distract or overwhelm, but instead invite you to get lost in a jungle adventure that's as much about wonder as it is about spectacle. The blend of stylized animation and thoughtful effects creates a rich, immersive experience that keeps you glued to the screen, watching an elephant protect a speck of dust with all the heart in the world. When diving into the world of Horton Hears a Who, one of the things that really stands out is how wonderfully crafted the settings and environments feel. Even though it's an animated film, the attention to set design and locations creates a world you can almost reach out and touch. The jungle of Nola isn't just a backdrop. It's practically a character itself, full of quirky details and imaginative touches that make Horton's home both wild and welcoming. The production design team clearly had a blast dreaming up this place, filling it with towering trees that seem to stretch forever, twisting vines that snake around every corner, and patches of colorful flowers and mushrooms that pop against the green like little explosions of fun. Every leaf, rock, and blade of grass is designed to feel vibrant and alive, contributing to a jungle that's lush but not overwhelming, playful but believable. The jungle's layered design is something to marvel at. There's depth to every scene, with foreground and background elements that draw your eye around the frame. You get the sense that Horton's path is full of surprises and hidden nooks, from cozy hollows perfect for a nap to precarious cliffs that add a pinch of danger. The locations feel lived in and natural, with little environmental details that give the impression of a thriving ecosystem. You might catch a glimpse of a bug scuttling by, a spider web glistening in the sunlight, or a cluster of mushrooms with their own tiny glow, all adding texture and life to the setting. Now, zooming way down to the microscopic world of Whoville, the production design takes a totally different but equally imaginative turn. This tiny city inside a speck of dust is a marvel of miniaturization and creativity. Every building, street, and household object is carefully designed to look handcrafted and full of personality. Whoville feels cozy and bustling, with little windows glowing warmly, winding streets that twist and turn, and quirky architectural styles that seem to blend Victorian charm with Dr. Seuss's trademark whimsy. The designers made sure every nook of the speck-sized town tells a story, from the mayor's office packed with gadgets and papers to Jojo's bedroom, filled with his quiet, thoughtful touches. The contrast between the two settings, the vast, sprawling jungle and the tiny, detailed Whoville, adds a delightful visual dynamic that keeps your eyes engaged throughout. This isn't just a big little world situation, it's a carefully balanced visual dance where both places feel equally real and important. The jungle's natural chaos perfectly complements Whoville's organized bustle, and the production design uses this to emphasize the movie's themes of scale and perspective. Props and smaller details are where the set design really shines. Whether it's a simple clover with veins you can practically trace, a weather vane spinning in Whoville's breeze, or the mayor's oversized spectacles that catch the light just right, these touches add layers of authenticity and charm. The design team went beyond the obvious and gave even the smallest objects character, making the world feel rich and thoughtfully built. And speaking of locations adding depth, the sets do a fantastic job of supporting the story's emotional beats. The stark, empty spaces Horton faces when he's isolated highlight his loneliness and determination. Meanwhile, the cozy, warm interiors of Whoville give a sense of community and hope that the characters fight to protect. The kangaroo's lair is designed to feel cold and imposing, with sharp angles and harsh shadows that emphasize her role as the antagonist. Each location reflects the mood and personality of the characters who inhabit or visit them, making the environment an active player in the narrative. In short, the set design and locations in Horton Hears a Who aren't just pretty pictures, they're immersive worlds that invite you to explore, full of playful creativity and rich detail. From the grandeur of the jungle to the intimate charm of Whoville, the production design crafts spaces that pull you deeper into the story and make the whole adventure feel bigger than just an animated film. It feels like a place you want to visit again and again. The dialogue and script of Horton Hears a Who are like a carefully spun web of cleverness, heart, and just the right amount of silliness that keeps you hooked from start to finish. What's instantly noticeable is how the writing manages to be both smart and accessible, delivering lines that are fun for kids but don't insult the intelligence of the adults watching. The script balances goofy humor with moments of genuine emotional weight, making it feel like a story that's as much about laughs as it is about meaning. One of the most charming aspects of the dialogue is how it captures the distinct personalities of the characters so clearly. Horton's lines are filled with gentle sincerity and unwavering conviction. His speech often carries a warmth and wisdom that makes you root for him, especially when he repeats his now iconic mantra, "A person's a person, no matter how small." That phrase isn't just a throwaway line. It's woven through the dialogue so naturally that it becomes a kind of emotional anchor, reminding you what Horton's fight is really about. Then there's the kangaroo, who's sharp-tongued, sarcastic, and absolutely certain she's the only voice of reason in the jungle. Her dialogue crackles with impatience and dry wit, offering a hilarious counterpoint to Horton's earnestness. The way she dismisses the Whos and rails against Horton's nonsense creates a fun tension that's both comedic and dramatic. Her cutting remarks, often laced with frustration, are memorable because they feel so real to her character's stubborn worldview. The Whos themselves have a delightful range of voices, from the anxious and excitable mayor, who delivers his lines with a frantic energy that conveys both hope and desperation, to Jojo, whose mostly silent but deeply meaningful expressions get a few powerful words that stand out all the more because they're so rare. The dialogue around Jojo is particularly effective in showing how sometimes less is more. His quiet voice contrasts with the louder characters and highlights the theme of being heard even if you speak softly. Humor in the script often comes from clever wordplay and quick back-and-forth exchanges that feel spontaneous and lively. There's a joyful rhythm to the banter between characters, whether it's Horton's gentle reassurances, the vulture's grumpy quips, or the monkey gang's chaotic chatter. The script knows when to lean into the absurd and when to pull back for moments of sincerity, which keeps the tone balanced and engaging throughout. Beyond the laughs, the script doesn't shy away from emotional moments either. The conversations between Horton and the Whos carry real stakes and tenderness. When Horton reassures the tiny citizens, or when the mayor pleads for belief and unity, the writing pulls at your heartstrings without ever tipping into melodrama. These moments feel earned and true, making the audience care deeply about the fate of a city no bigger than a speck. There are standout lines sprinkled throughout that stick in your mind long after the credits roll. The mantra mentioned earlier is probably the most famous, but smaller gems like the kangaroo's sarcastic quips or the mayor's frantic speeches also hit the mark. These lines give the characters depth and keep the dialogue memorable and quotable, perfect for fans who want to relive their favorite moments. What really makes the script shine is its ability to blend meaning with entertainment effortlessly. It delivers important lessons about courage, empathy, and community wrapped in witty, sharp dialogue that feels natural and true to the world it's building. You never feel like the movie is lecturing. Instead, you're swept up in conversations that are as fun as they are thoughtful. So, the dialogue and script in Horton Hears a Who play a huge role in shaping the film's charm and heart. They bring the characters vividly to life, keep the story moving with humor and emotion, and deliver lines that resonate far beyond the screen. It's a brilliant mix that makes the film as enjoyable to listen to as it is to watch. Horton Hears a Who plays with its genre in a way that feels both familiar and refreshingly original, managing to deliver a delightful mix of family-friendly adventure, comedy, and heartfelt drama without ever leaning too heavily on tired cliches. At its core, it's an animated fantasy tale, a genre packed with big emotions, whimsical worlds, and a moral compass pointing straight to kindness and courage, but it approaches these elements with a lightness and creativity that keeps things lively and surprising. Right from the start, the movie embraces the classic underdog hero setup. Horton, a gentle giant in a world that doesn't always believe in him, embarks on a quest to protect a tiny community that others dismiss or outright reject. This storyline is a familiar genre staple, the small against the mighty, belief against skepticism, and the triumph of goodness. But what makes Horton Hears a Who stand out is how it layers this with a playful tone and inventive world-building that never feels predictable. It's like taking a well-worn path but decorating it with vibrant colors, quirky characters, and clever humor that keeps the journey fresh. The balance between humor and drama is another place where the film shines in genre execution. It doesn't shy away from the emotional stakes. After all, Horton is risking his safety for a tiny, vulnerable community, but it also knows how to keep things upbeat and funny. The kangaroo's sarcastic remarks and the comical antics of the jungle animals inject plenty of levity, making sure the movie never becomes too heavy for its younger audience. Yet, these moments of humor never undercut the sincerity of the story. Instead, they serve as perfect counterpoints that enrich the emotional highs and lows. Action and suspense are woven in without feeling forced or over the top. The threats Horton faces, from the hostile jungle creatures to the looming danger of the clover being lost, are handled with a measured tension that keeps you invested but doesn't tip into frenetic chaos. The pacing is steady, allowing moments of quiet reflection alongside bursts of excitement, which helps the story breathe and gives the emotional beats room to land. The race against time, to save Whoville, plays out with enough urgency to keep viewers on edge without overwhelming the film's gentle spirit. The movie also plays with perspective in a way that's unique for its genre. By focusing on such a tiny world within a vast jungle, it explores ideas of scale and importance that many family adventure films don't touch on so explicitly. This shift in perspective creates a fresh angle on the typical save-the-world plot. Here, the world is small but no less significant, and the hero's challenge is as much about convincing others as it is about physical rescue. It's a clever twist that adds depth without complicating the narrative. At the same time, Horton Hears a Who doesn't completely reject genre conventions. It embraces the whimsical, colorful animation style, the clear-cut good versus bad dynamic, and the uplifting message typical of animated family films. But it does so with a confident charm that feels more like a celebration than a retread. The film respects its genre's traditions while sprinkling in enough originality to keep viewers engaged and entertained. The musical elements also play into the genre's strengths. The soundtrack and songs add a layer of joy and energy that's a staple of family animation, but they're integrated smoothly, so they feel like a natural extension of the story rather than interruptions. This musical storytelling helps maintain the film's lively rhythm and adds another dimension to its genre blend. In terms of character archetypes, the film has fun with expectations. Horton is the noble, kind-hearted hero, but he's also delightfully quirky and relatable. The kangaroo fits the antagonist mold, but with a humorous edge that makes her more than just a villain. The Whos represent community and resilience, embodying the idea that even the smallest voices deserve to be heard. These archetypes are well used without feeling stale, thanks to sharp writing and charismatic performances. Overall, Horton Hears a Who knows exactly what genre it belongs to but isn't afraid to add its own spin. It balances action, humor, and drama with skill, embraces the conventions of family animation while bringing fresh ideas to the table, and delivers a story that's both entertaining and meaningful. It's like a classic tale told by a storyteller who knows how to keep you smiling, thinking, and maybe even wiping away a tear or two along the way. Horton Hears a Who might look like a simple children's story on the surface, but once you start peeling back the layers, it's clear that this film is quietly packing a punch when it comes to social and cultural commentary. It sneaks in some surprisingly thoughtful ideas about community, tolerance, and the importance of every voice, no matter how small, which feel especially relevant in today's world. What's brilliant is how these messages are woven into the story so naturally that you hardly notice you're being nudged to think a little deeper. The core theme about a person's a person, no matter how small, isn't just a catchy line. It's a powerful statement about respect and recognition for those who are often overlooked or marginalized. This can be seen as a gentle metaphor for various real-world issues, whether it's about minorities, underrepresented groups, or anyone whose voice struggles to be heard in the noise of society. Horton's fierce dedication to protecting the tiny Whos, despite the skepticism and outright hostility he faces, mirrors the kind of allyship that's so crucial in social movements today. What's refreshing about the film's approach is that it never feels preachy or heavy-handed. The message comes wrapped in humor, heart, and adventure, making it accessible without diluting its impact. Instead of pointing fingers or delivering lectures, the story invites viewers to experience the frustration and hope of trying to make others listen. This subtlety is key. Kids absorb the idea of empathy and respect without feeling like they're being lectured, and adults can appreciate the layered meaning beneath the surface. The film also touches on themes of prejudice and fear of the unknown through characters like the kangaroo and some of the other jungle animals who refuse to believe in the Whos' existence. Their dismissiveness and outright hostility reflect real-world attitudes of skepticism and intolerance toward different cultures or communities. This adds a layer of complexity, showing how fear can breed misunderstanding and how courage and kindness are needed to break through those barriers. Another cultural angle comes from the idea of unity and collective action. The Whos, despite being tiny and vulnerable, come together to save their community. This sense of collective strength, where every voice matters and everyone plays a part, resonates with ideas about democracy, civic engagement, and social responsibility. The film suggests that change isn't about loud grandstanding but about persistent, united effort, even when the odds seem stacked. Interestingly, Horton Hears a Who also gently critiques narrow-mindedness and authoritarian attitudes, embodied by the kangaroo's refusal to accept anything outside her worldview. Her character can be seen as a symbol of rigid power structures or those resistant to change, and the story makes a case for openness, curiosity, and humility instead. This dynamic adds a subtle political undertone that feels surprisingly mature for an animated film. The setting itself, juxtaposing the vast jungle with the microscopic world of Whoville, serves as a metaphor for perspective and awareness. It reminds us that no matter how insignificant something may seem at first glance, it can hold immense value and meaning. This idea challenges the audience to broaden their own perspectives and consider the importance of empathy across differences. The film's handling of these sensitive topics is done with a light touch, but with enough depth to make viewers of all ages think. It's not trying to solve complex social issues in 90 minutes, but rather planting seeds of awareness and kindness, wrapped in an engaging story that appeals to hearts and minds alike. So, beneath the colorful animation and playful characters, Horton Hears a Who is quietly making a statement about the world we live in, about listening, respecting, and standing up for those who might otherwise be ignored. It's a gentle yet powerful reminder that every voice matters, and that sometimes the smallest among us can teach the biggest lessons. Horton Hears a Who is a film that really knows how to connect with its audience on multiple levels, stirring up a mix of emotions that keep you glued to the screen and leave you thinking long after it's over. It's like a roller coaster ride through laughter, suspense, and heartwarming moments, all bundled in a colorful animated package that appeals to kids and adults alike. The way it pulls you in emotionally is one of its biggest strengths, making it impossible not to get caught up in Horton's journey and the fate of Whoville. From the very beginning, the film sets a tone that's playful and inviting, with quirky characters and humorous dialogue that easily draw you in. You find yourself chuckling at the kangaroo's snarky remarks or the antics of the jungle animals, which creates a light-hearted vibe that keeps things fun and energetic. But then, just when you're enjoying the laughs, the film pulls the emotional reins a bit tighter. Horton's unwavering belief in the invisible Whos, despite ridicule and danger, creates moments of genuine tension and empathy. You want him to succeed so badly that you feel a personal investment in the story, as if you're rooting for a friend who's taken on a seemingly impossible task. There are definitely moments that tug at the heartstrings, like when the mayor of Whoville speaks with anxious hope, or when Jojo quietly steps up in a way that's small but profoundly impactful. These scenes are crafted to elicit a soft, emotional response, reminding you of the power of courage and kindness. It's the kind of gentle emotional pull that doesn't overwhelm but instead invites you to pause and reflect on the bigger themes of belief, community, and standing up for what's right. The film also knows how to build excitement and suspense in a way that keeps viewers on the edge of their seats. The looming danger of the clover falling, the escalating disbelief from the jungle residents, and Horton's brave stand all combine to create a narrative tension that balances perfectly with the lighter moments. This mix ensures you're never bored. There's always something happening that makes you lean forward in your seat or hold your breath just a little. What's cool is how Horton Hears a Who invites repeated viewings. The richness of the story, the memorable lines, and the lovable characters make it a film you want to watch again and again. Each viewing reveals new details or deepens your understanding of the characters' motivations and the story's themes. Kids might come back for the fun and the laughs, while adults might appreciate the subtle social commentary or the cleverness of the script. Beyond entertainment, the film sparks discussion, especially about its core message that every voice counts. It's a conversation starter about empathy, acceptance, and standing up for others, topics that are as relevant in classrooms and family living rooms as they are in the wider world. The characters and their struggles offer plenty of material to talk about, whether it's Horton's courage, the kangaroo's skepticism, or the Who's resilience. The emotional resonance is amplified by the film's ability to make you care deeply about a tiny, almost invisible world. That sense of scale is brilliant because it challenges you to think about how even the smallest acts and voices can have huge impacts. It's this clever storytelling choice that helps the film connect on a more meaningful level, making the audience feel both entertained and inspired. In the end, Horton Hears a Who doesn't just aim to fill a time slot with colorful animation and catchy songs. It aims to engage your heart and mind, to make you laugh, maybe shed a tear, and think a little differently about the world around you. It's that emotional mix, fun, excitement, tenderness, and hope, that makes it such an engaging film for audiences of all ages. When you put Horton Hears a Who side by side with other animated family films, especially those that came out around the same time or share similar themes, it really carves out its own charming space while still tipping its hat to some familiar territory. In the landscape of early 2000s animated movies, it's not just another colorful adventure. It's a blend of Dr. Seuss's signature whimsy with a surprisingly thoughtful heart that sets it apart from many genre peers. If you think about other big animated hits like Shrek or Finding Nemo, Horton shares some DNA with those films. It combines humor that works for both kids and adults, memorable characters, and a story that balances fun with emotional depth. However, unlike the fairy tale parodies of Shrek or the epic undersea quest of Finding Nemo, Horton leans more into a message about community and belief in a way that feels a bit more earnest and less satirical. It doesn't poke fun at its world so much as invite you to marvel at its quirks and wisdom. Compared to other Dr. Seuss adaptations, like The Cat in the Hat or The Lorax, Horton Hears a Who arguably strikes a better balance between respecting the original source material and updating it for a modern audience. While The Cat in the Hat had a mixed reception partly because of its live-action approach and tone, Horton embraces the animated format wholeheartedly, which suits the whimsical, imaginative style of Seuss's work perfectly. It feels like a love letter to the author's vision, capturing both the playful language and the underlying moral messages without losing its audience in translation. Looking at the director's filmography, Horton Hears a Who fits snugly into Jimmy Hayward's knack for creating stories that are visually engaging but also emotionally resonant. While Hayward's later work may delve into more sophisticated or varied themes, here he nails that classic animated formula of combining adventure, comedy, and heartfelt moments. The pacing and tone have a breezy feel that keeps the story accessible, making it feel like a pure family film without any heavy-handedness. In terms of genre, Horton follows the animated fantasy adventure blueprint: heroic quest, quirky side characters, and a clear moral compass, but it brings fresh ideas through its unique narrative perspective. The concept of a microscopic civilization living on a speck of dust is delightfully original and adds a playful twist to the standard save the world plot. That tiny versus giant dynamic is a fun playground for both storytelling and visual creativity, which not all animated films explore with this level of imagination. It also stands out by how it handles its antagonist. The kangaroo is memorable not because she's terrifying or villainous in the traditional sense, but because she's stubborn, sarcastic, and a little ridiculous, a comedic foil rather than a dark threat. This approach is different from the more menacing villains you see in films like The Incredibles or Tangled, giving Horton a lighter, more humorous edge that keeps the tone consistent and family-friendly. When you compare the film's animation style to others of its era, it's clear that Horton Hears a Who embraces bright colors and fluid designs but doesn't rely on hyper-realistic CGI or complex textures that other studios were beginning to experiment with. This choice gives it a timeless, storybook feel that complements the Seussian source and stands out amid the push for photorealism seen in some contemporaries. It's a stylistic nod to traditional animation values, but with the polish of modern technology. In summary, Horton Hears a Who doesn't just follow the familiar formula of animated family films. It sprinkles in unique elements from Dr. Seuss's world, balances humor and heart with precision, and offers an imaginative setting that sets it apart. Whether you're a fan of other animated classics or a casual viewer, it brings something to the table that feels both comfortably familiar and refreshingly original, making it a memorable entry in the genre's lineup. Horton Hears a Who is packed with symbolism and metaphors that sneak up on you like little treasures hidden beneath its colorful surface, making the story richer and more meaningful without ever feeling heavy or preachy. The film's visual style and storytelling choices invite you to look beyond the obvious and uncover messages that resonate on multiple levels, whether you're a kid marveling at talking animals or an adult appreciating the layers beneath. Right from the start, the idea of Whoville existing on a tiny speck of dust is a fantastic metaphor for the importance of perspective and awareness. It challenges the way we think about size and significance, how something so small and seemingly insignificant can hold an entire world full of life, ideas, and feelings. This tiny speck represents more than just a physical place. It symbolizes overlooked communities, unheard voices, and the idea that every being, no matter how small, deserves respect and protection. It's a clever way of reminding us that size doesn't determine value. Horton himself stands as a powerful symbol of belief and perseverance. His famous line, "A person's a person, no matter how small," isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a core metaphor for empathy and standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible or others doubt you. Horton's enormous heart and unwavering faith in the Whos represent the kind of courage and moral conviction that the film champions. He's the embodiment of hope, kindness, and the idea that one individual can make a difference. The kangaroo, with her dismissive attitude and loud skepticism, serves as a metaphor for closed-mindedness and denial. Her refusal to believe in the Whos or take their existence seriously mirrors real-world tendencies to ignore or dismiss perspectives that challenge our own worldview. Visually, she towers over the other characters with a stern, imposing presence, an embodiment of resistance to change and fear of the unknown. This contrast between her and Horton highlights the tension between openness and rigidity, making the film's message about acceptance even clearer. The jungle itself is a kind of symbolic landscape. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and full of dangers, much like the world Horton must navigate to protect the Whos. It reflects the challenge of standing up for what's right in the face of hostility and misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Whoville, with its bustling community living on something so tiny, represents unity and the power of collective effort. The way the Whos band together to make noise and save their home becomes a metaphor for the strength found in cooperation and shared voices. The clover on which Whoville sits carries a subtle symbolism as well. It's delicate and fragile, teetering on the edge, much like the precarious situation of marginalized communities in the real world. The risk of it falling off the clover is not just a plot device, but a metaphor for vulnerability and the urgent need for protection and awareness. That tiny clover becomes a whole world's lifeline, emphasizing how easily important things can be overlooked or destroyed if we're not careful. Recurring motifs like the persistent buzzing noise Horton hears and the Whos' determined chants emphasize the film's focus on communication and being heard. Sound here isn't just background, it's a representation of existence and presence. The struggle to make the noise loud enough for the jungle animals to notice is a playful but pointed metaphor for activism and raising awareness. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices have to work the hardest to be acknowledged. Visually, the film uses contrasts in size and scale to reinforce these metaphors. The giant jungle animals and the tiny Whos share the screen in a way that constantly reminds us of differences in power, perspective, and recognition. The animators cleverly play with these scales to make you feel Horton's protective nature and the Whos' fragility, which deepens the emotional impact of the story. Even the color palettes and lighting subtly support the symbolism. The warm, inviting hues of Whoville contrast with the darker, more shadowed jungle scenes, reflecting safety versus danger, acceptance versus skepticism. These visual cues guide the viewer's emotions and underline the narrative stakes without a single word. So, the film isn't just a fun adventure with cute characters, it's a layered tale full of symbolic meaning and metaphors that enrich the story and its themes. These elements make Horton Hears a Who not just entertaining but thought-provoking, encouraging viewers to listen carefully, look closely, and find the big meaning in the small things. Horton Hears a Who might not be part of a sprawling franchise like some other animated hits, but it holds a very special place in the broader universe of Dr. Seuss adaptations and the long legacy of his beloved stories. Think of it as a bright, standalone gem that fits neatly into the timeline of bringing Seuss's whimsical and wise worlds from page to screen. While it doesn't contribute to an ongoing series with sequels or spin-offs, it definitely adds depth and charm to the collection of Seuss-inspired films that have captured the imaginations of generations. The film arrived at a time when animated adaptations of Dr. Seuss books were beginning to gain more mainstream attention. Coming after the somewhat controversial live-action The Cat in the Hat and before the Lorax, Horton Hears a Who stood out by fully embracing the animated format, which allowed it to stay true to the original story's quirky, colorful spirit. It's like the perfect bridge between respecting the classic source material and pushing the storytelling into new, modern territory. Horton himself is one of Dr. Seuss's most iconic characters, and this film acts as a definitive cinematic introduction to him for many viewers who might have only known the story from books. It's interesting how the film manages to encapsulate the spirit of the original 1954 children's book while expanding on the world and characters enough to make it feel like a full cinematic adventure. In that sense, it enriches the legacy of Dr. Seuss by taking a relatively short story and turning it into a vibrant, full-length feature without losing the core message or charm. In the historical context of animation, Horton Hears a Who arrived when computer animation was really hitting its stride, but before the explosion of sequels and mega-franchise films dominated the market. It's part of a wave of animated movies that balance technological advances with strong storytelling rather than relying purely on spectacle. This film is like a snapshot of early 2000s animation trends, bright, clean CGI but still playful and story-focused. Interestingly, Horton also holds a cultural place as a story about inclusion and the value of every voice, which resonates beyond its time. It's not just a tale from the past retold, but a message that's continually relevant, making it feel timeless even though it came out nearly 2 decades ago. This timelessness helps it remain a favorite, especially for families looking for meaningful stories wrapped in fun animation. Though it's not part of a franchise with multiple entries, the film's success and appeal helped pave the way for future Dr. Seuss adaptations and reinforced the viability of bringing these classic tales to life through animation. It's like a beloved chapter in the ongoing story of Dr. Seuss's influence on popular culture, standing strong on its own while inviting viewers to explore more of Seuss's fantastical worlds. In terms of broader cultural history, Horton Hears a Who arrives at a moment when animated films were increasingly used to communicate important social messages in a way that's accessible for all ages. Its focus on empathy, community, and speaking up fits neatly within that tradition, making it not just entertainment but a cultural touchstone for teaching kindness and respect through storytelling. So while Horton Hears a Who might not be the first in a series or a historically based film, it's a crucial piece in the puzzle of Dr. Seuss's cinematic universe and the evolution of animated storytelling. It captures a moment in animation history where heart and message were as important as technology, and it continues to shine as a timeless classic that bridges generations of fans. If you're ready to dive into the delightful world of Horton Hears a Who and experience all its colorful charm and heartwarming messages, you've got a few solid options to choose from depending on how you like to watch movies these days. While it's a bit of a classic now, it's still very accessible across multiple platforms, so whether you want to stream it on your couch, rent it digitally, or own a physical copy, the movie is within easy reach. First up, streaming services are the go-to for many viewers, and Horton Hears a Who often shows up on popular platforms like Peacock or Hulu, depending on regional availability and licensing deals. If you have a subscription to one of those, it's a perfect, fuss-free way to press play and get whisked away into Seuss's whimsical universe without any hassle. Streaming lets you enjoy the film anytime you want, and since it's a family favorite, it's a great pick for spontaneous movie nights or lazy weekends. If you prefer a bit more control over your viewing experience, digital rental or purchase options are plentiful. Platforms like Amazon Prime Video, Google Play Movies, iTunes, and YouTube Movies usually have Horton Hears a Who available to rent or buy. Renting it means you get a limited window to watch, which is great if you're planning a special viewing but don't want to commit to owning it. Buying a digital copy, on the other hand, lets you revisit Horton's adventures again and again, perfect for fans who want to build their digital library of animated classics. For those who love the nostalgia and the tactile feeling of physical media, Horton Hears a Who is also available on DVD and Blu-ray. Watching it on Blu-ray can be especially rewarding because of the enhanced picture and sound quality, which brings out the vivid colors and playful animations in all their glory. Plus, physical copies often come with fun extras like behind-the-scenes featurettes, deleted scenes, or interviews that add depth to your viewing experience. It's a great way to appreciate the craft behind the film and dive deeper into the magic of Dr. Seuss's world. If you're after the absolute fullest impact, especially if you have kids or want to gather friends and family, consider watching it on a big screen, whether that's a home theater setup or a projector in your living room. The vibrant animation and whimsical designs really pop when you see them large and in detail, and the film's lively soundtrack fills the room, pulling everyone right into the story. It's the kind of movie where the bigger the screen, the better the experience, letting you catch every quirky character expression and colorful background detail. And don't forget sound. Pairing Horton Hears a Who with a good sound system can make a huge difference. The musical score and sound effects are playful and lively, so hearing the buzz of Whoville and Horton's big footsteps with clear audio adds an extra layer of immersion. It's like stepping into Seuss's world in your own living room. If you're looking for live screenings, the film occasionally appears in special family movie events or animated film festivals. These screenings can be a fun way to experience the movie alongside other fans, bringing that communal magic of shared laughter and applause, although these are less common than on-demand options. In short, no matter how you like to watch movies, streaming, digital rental or purchase, physical media, or on a big screen, Horton Hears a Who has got you covered. It's a versatile film that fits comfortably into your favorite viewing style, ready to bring joy, laughter, and a meaningful message about believing in the small voices that make a big difference. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and get ready to join Horton on an unforgettable adventure.